Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Palace / Fulham crossover podcast. It's Wednesday, the 6th of November. Remember, the 6th of November for the crossover pod. I'm joined today by Joe Lodge. How you doing, Joe?
Yeah, all right, thanks, Finn. I'm a bit tired. I'm a politics graduate who's trying to maintain an illusion that he's interested in anything other than football. So I stayed up watching that slow motion car crash last night. But I'd say Palace's first 7 weeks of the season prepared me quite well for that kind of experience.
I was going to say, you've been through almost enough trauma already this season to sort of get you ready for all of that. And talking of, I can't even think of a good intro to this, but we are joined by Charlie from the Fulham squad. How are you doing, Charlie?
Yeah, good. I mean, I'm still buzzing off of Monday night's result, which I went to. So I'm over the moon at the moment. So talking about Fulham, very easy for me at the moment.
I've got an intro now. I can say, just like Harry Wilson in the last minute, we've got Charlie swooping in to give us his insights into the. We'll sort that out in post. Absolutely, as you said, a fantastic result for you guys, because it looked like you were consigned to losing 3 points there, and then suddenly Mr. Wilson just popped up with 2 great goals.
Yeah, it was crazy to be there. It's one of the best atmospheres I've heard. There's something about playing under the lights that just makes watching football just a little bit better. Like, it feels like everything sort of turned up to 11. It was unreal. Sitting next to my dad, we both were saying it's just one of those nights where you've dominated the game all day long and you just somehow can't win. I'm sure you've been in those positions before, lads.
Oh, what, Palace dominating a game? I don't know about that, but not scoring that part, definitely. But yeah, no, in fact, best game of football I've ever seen live was at Craven Cottage when Fulham beat Juventus. My best mate's season ticket holder. And
my favourite game I've ever been to live. There you go. Oh.
It was unbelievable. I mean, my friend kept on sneaking off to the toilets to go and have a cigarette, so he almost kept on missing some of the goals.
That's nuts.
Unforgivable. But
yeah, no, I mean, I'd actually say there's a similarity between the Harry Wilson goal, the first one maybe, and Dempsey's chip. They sort of both just sort of floated in the air. Everyone went silent, and then it's gone in the net.
Absolutely, it was like a phenomenal finish, and like I remember, as you said, like when Clint Dempsey chipped the Juve keeper, like just silence throughout the stadium, which I've never seen that in football before. Just where there's just an abrupt change in volume, but so obviously Palace play host to Fulham on Saturday at Selhurst Park.
We do.
2 teams in very different scenarios, I would say, at the moment. Both teams with a lot of change and transition over the summer, but one, I would say, arguably with a much better start to the season.
You could say so.
And I don't think it's Crystal Palace. Joe, what are your thoughts in the build-up to the game? What do you think? Is this going to be a case where Palace are really going to have to fight for some points, or do you think it's a bit more even-keeled? What are your thoughts?
So I think thanks to team news, although I think it will probably lead to Palace being a bit more sort of dogged and cautious. Otherwise, I think they look at this fixture, and even with how good Fulham have been and the form, it's, as a home fixture, it's sort of an important chance to try and pick up 3 points before a really difficult run after the international break for Palace. However, they've really only got 2 fit centre mids, and I say that one of them's not really fit in Decore, it would probably be rushed back to start, and the other one's not really a centre mid in Kamada, and missing Eze is going to be crucial. So I think it's going to be a bit more cautious than we expect, than we would have previously expected prior to those injuries and prior to Wharton being sent off for surgery as well. And I suspect it will be a game where both teams sort of don't throw caution to the wind too much, and not predicting an all-time classic, to be honest.
You don't think it's going to be like the Wolves game last week then, where it's end to end like basketball and just back and forth? You think it's a slightly more cautious approach, maybe?
Yeah, they don't have that sort of suicidal character trait that Gary O'Neill has on the Wolves, where they don't have the personnel to play out from the back and play this really attacking, free-flowing football, particularly, and they just continue to try and do it, and it makes for some really entertaining games. But they've not won one yet this season. I feel like Marco Silva's a lot more pragmatic, cautious, and yeah, I'm not expecting such a swashbuckling match this time.
And interesting. So I mentioned at the beginning. So Charlie, obviously Fulham got some new faces into the squad in the summer, and some quite big names as well. And
yeah, no kidding.
And I would say, and I mean, how have they settled into the squad so far? And I mean, I struggle not to think of it almost as like the Arsenal regen squad. I mean, but they seem to be doing really well. And I mean, I think each one of their additions over the last couple of seasons in players, for example, like Bernd Leno, who I think is a phenomenal goalkeeper. Players like Alex Iwobi, Reece Nelson, Emile Smith-Rowe. How have they sort of settled into the squad? And do you feel like they're an integral part now to that Fulham team?
I would say I'm not sure about integral. I mean, for Reece Nelson, probably most likely is not really integral, but he has been fantastic when he has played. I mean, Reece Nelson was a really last minute sort of loan job because another signing from Lyon fell through. The guy that apparently cried in his medical and then ran off and no one could find him. It was very weird. So we got Reece Nelson in very last minute, and he's had his second start since 2020 on the weekend, on Monday, and he was fantastic. And I think stuff off the bench, he's shown real promise as well. Smith-Rowe, on the other hand, that was a seriously blockbuster signing. You know, we've smashed our transfer record there, and I think he's been worth every penny. I mean, the reason you'd probably say it was a cut price fee, really, because of how much Smith-Rowe had been hyped up over the last 2 years. And injuries have sort of kept him out. Arsenal has sort of gone in the trajectory that no one expected. And I think he just sort of got pushed out of the team to our benefit. I mean, he's been so fantastic since he's come in. He's got a real patience on the ball. Unlike Andres Pereira, who always seems to be it looks like he's thinking at 1,000 miles an hour. And that always ends up translating into his final third performance. Whereas Smith-Rowe just looks so calm. He'll arrive into the box super late. And just pick up any scraps that seem to come his way. He doesn't really attack like those sort of shadow striker attacking midfielders that you sort of come to expect from modern football, like a Julian Alvarez or something like that. Really, he's all about staying off and then picking the pass later. I mean, I think his pass accuracy is well above 90% at the moment, which for an attacking player is seriously impressive. I mean, I've been so impressed with him.
Absolutely. And I feel like, for example, I mean, Emile Smith-Rowe was in fact linked with Palace at one point over the summer, but I think it's quite an indication. I think we can't really financially compete with a team like Fulham. I think Fulham has that ability. I mean, it's sort of a cliche, but one, it's a London club, so I feel like it appeals to a lot of footballers. Yeah. And two, Fulham has the finances, I feel, just through, it seems to be a pretty well-run club, even though a lot of my friends do complain about season ticket prices, which is quite interesting. Like Archie Ringtart, I know from the Fulham pod, has complained directly to the owners of Fulham about the tickets. So hopefully that's something that can get addressed. But the team seems to be being sort of like developed and growing really well, nicely under Marco Silva's tutelage. Obviously, the other big story from between Palace and Fulham is, I mean, I was devastated when I heard about this, but Joe, what are your thoughts on Joachim Andersen so far? And do you feel Palace still desperately miss him? And would you have him back in a heartbeat at Palace if possible, Joe?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think Joachim Andersen, what he bought, funnily enough, I think they've replaced him quite well in a defensive sense. I think what those three of Guéhi, Lacroix and Chalobah offer collectively probably covers all of the defensive attributes that Joachim Andersen has without some of his vulnerabilities, when he's playing on the halfway line or he gets isolated one-on-one in the wide area. However, they've lost out on the ball. His ability to spray those passes was so crucial. Maxence Lacroix's showing some signs of being able to do that to a certain extent, but it's just the willingness and bravery of the passing from Andersen. Sometimes doesn't come off. Sometimes he plays an absolute beauty into the channel for one of the fullbacks or one of the forwards to run onto, and that just gets Palace going out of nowhere when they're struggling to play through the middle, as is a occupational hazard when you only play with two there. And I think they'd probably miss him in a soft skills sense. I'd be interested to hear what you think of this, Charlie, and what you've heard about how he is at Fulham. But it was widely reported that he was one of the real emotional leaders in the Palace team. And Palace, their heads were just down for the first 7 game weeks and looked like they needed someone to shake them up. And I wonder how much of that is that he used to be that guy in the team and he's not there anymore. And I think Gay's been made captain now and is perhaps growing into that role, but he's just personality-wise going to be a different kind of leader, one of those quieter, lead by example guys. And I think Palace miss him potentially most off the pitch for just ability to get everyone going when they're a bit low energy.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm going to agree because Andersen, we've seen him before at the Cottage. Like he was there on loan, and in his loan spell, he ended up with the captain's armband. So, I mean, like, I think that speaks volumes when you're talking about soft skills. I think, he's got serious international experience as well on the biggest stages with Denmark. He's a born leader. I remember when it was reported that we had submitted a bid for him, and I was like, "What? They're not going to sell him? Like, are you joking?" Like, I love that we've done it. Like, fantastic, because we'd love to have him back. Because Fulham fans loved him in that 1 year. That was the whole "don't fall in love with a lone player" thing. We truly did. Areola was probably the other one we fell in love with that season, who's done very well at West Ham. But yeah, when we put that bid in for him, I just thought it was a joke, like some weird joke. Because I was thinking, there's literally no chance. He's such a solid piece of your setup. I know what he brings to a football club. We talked about the long balls. I don't think there's another defender, centre-back, apart from maybe Van Dijk, that can play a long ball that accurately, that often. Yeah, I love Andersen. When you guys accepted it and it was going through, I still sort of thought it was a joke. Like, I don't understand how you can let a player like that go.
Yeah, my understanding is I think even he was surprised at how smoothly the transfer went through. I think he actually expected the Crystal Palace to fight a bit more to keep him. But I purely think it was a financial decision, which is doesn't make it any better for me. I still think I would love to still have Andersen at the club. And I think Joe makes a really excellent point about his leadership skills. And that's something we've been seriously lacking, especially when we've gone behind in certain games this season. But yeah, no, a seriously good acquisition by Fulham there in the summer. We're going to have a quick little ad break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about possible tic-tacs and strategies and lineups and all that jazz. So don't go away. Zencastr. Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Welcome back to the Daily Palace / Fulham crossover podcast. We've just been talking about the build-up to Saturday's game at Selhurst Park between Crystal Palace and Fulham, talking about two teams that have undergone a lot of change, a lot of surgery over the summer, and now look a little different, a bit more Botox. I was going to say something about hairline there, but then realised it's a little bit too close to the bone for me. So Charlie, what are your thoughts? How do you think Silva's gonna? What do you think his approach to this game is going to be on Saturday?
I think it's going to be, but I think, look, what we've been doing so far this season has been working so well. I think we've been unlucky in so many games, and I think he's probably one of the only managers, apart from maybe Iraola at Bournemouth, to fully like out tactic Pep. That game against City, like that's sort of where you hold your managers up to a microscope. It's there against probably the best manager in the world. And Silva did remarkably well. What he's done with our wing play recently, we've seen the resurgence of Adama Traore, who's been a massive, sort of stalwart for us. He's got 3 assists and a goal this season already. I'm shocked that his hamstring hasn't fallen off yet, because I was sort of expecting it to within the first 3 games, because he was getting so many minutes. And I was like, oh no, this isn't good. Just sort of leave him on the bench, sort of like a racehorse that you massage for ages, and just let him go with 20 minutes to go, which is what we saw against Brentford actually on Monday. So he's, but I think the thing that Marco's done so well, apart from the defence this season has been the shining light, is he's got so many players that can play in about 4 or 5 different positions. Our entire squad is ridiculously versatile, which basically means that we can adapt to pretty much any situation that's thrown at us. I mean, you've seen most of our attacking players can also play in the middle, and most of our players in the middle can also play out wide. So it gives us a lot of versatility when trying to sort of dictate how to play the game. What we've seen recently is the loss of João Palhinha. Everyone thought it was going to sink us, and I think we're a better side than we were last year. Obviously, Lukic has been a big part of that, but he's now injured. So it's been interesting to see how we've coped over the last 2 games. Luckily, this is a very good stretch of games for a player that's very key for us to be injured. I think this sort of 4 stretch of games that Lukic will be out for are winnable, if you can say that anymore, for us. So yeah, I think if we're looking at how we're going to go at it on the weekend, I don't think it's going to change much at all. The only thing I would say is maybe has Reece Nelson proven enough of a point that he can start again? I mean, probably not. I think we're going to see the same team that went out the week before, and I think you'll see Adama back in the team. But yeah, that's how I see it.
I mean, he's a fascinating footballer, isn't he, Adama Traore? Like,
yeah.
Up until recently, I was living in Barcelona, and obviously Adama Traore is originally from Barcelona, and he even had a weird sort of spell. I don't know if you remember, where he came back on loan, and they didn't put a transfer bid in for him. It did, but I always think of him as a bit of a slingshot player, as in, like you said, I think you just sort of, you said the same thing. You sort of use him as like almost like a shock tactic. You sort of get him to come on, and he just runs at your fullbacks and sort of skins them alive. And I know he did that for years and years as well at Wolves, especially against teams like Man City. I think it's really interesting what you say about the flexibility of the squad as well, and how versatile they are, and how they can play multiple positions. And I think that's going to be real asset, I think, to Marco Silva for the rest of the season in terms of, for example, injuries and going forward. And yeah, it's really, really interesting. Joe, what are your thoughts? How do you think Glasner's going to approach this game, and which players do you think will be key in sort of tackling those creative players of Fulham's?
So yeah, I think again, Glasner's hands are tied a bit in how he goes about this by a lot of injuries. He'll stick to the 3-4-3. I think it's worked well in the last week. They've got those wins against Spurs and Villa, and put in a pretty good performance against Wolves. So I think we'll stick to that. And as I say, we'll probably see Kamada and Decore playing in the centre together, because Hughes is suspended as well, which was, I mean, the amount of time, I can't believe it's taken 10 game weeks with the amount of yellow cards that guy picks up. I sort of see more clear routes for Fulham to hurt Palace than vice versa. But I think a few key things will be, Ismaila Sarr could play a key role. Again, I suspect he'll start in the absence of Eze. And there's a potential angle for him to attack with Anthony Robinson. Obviously bombs up quite a lot for Fulham, and that would be maybe something they could look to exploit in an otherwise fairly conservative compact back line, I don't think either Andersen or Calvin Bassey would particularly fancy getting dragged into a one-on-one with Sarr out wide, and he's going to be pretty eager to prove his worth after a game against Wolves where he was super lively and getting amazing positions, but finishing awfully. So I think he's one to watch. I also think it'd be interesting to see what Palace can make from set pieces in the game, because that was such a vital part of their performance against Wolves. That was where all kind of like 4 maybe major goal scoring opportunities came from. And there's been an interesting sort of tweak out of the absence of Eze. They've got Kamada's been taking the corners, the free kicks, and he probably doesn't have quite the same ball striking quality, but he does orchestrate some pretty clever routines we've seen. Works those little short ones really well, and cause lots of issues for Wolves. Caveat is Wolves can't defend set pieces, struggled against everyone this season. So this will be an interesting test to see, was that a Wolves problem or actually a new tool in the Palace arsenal for breaking teams down when they can't rely on high pressing or Eze's brilliance. But as I said at the start, I think it'll be a little more cautious from Palace. I think they would like to goad Fulham into playing in a way where, rather than speak about their versatility, rather than focusing on Adama and the counter-attacks, which counter-attacks have been a nightmare for Palace all season, and Adama will probably be able to get Chalobah or the Quell both sent off before the end of the match. Is there? I think, if they play, if Palace can kind of go them into playing, trying to dominate the midfield, playing an Iwobi or something like that instead, another more ball dominant player, and then just absorb the pressure, they'll be happier with that, and they do look a bit more comfortable defending in a sort of deeper block at times this season. So I think it will be a fairly cautious one. Try and make the set pieces work, hit them on the counter with Sarr, and hope that Mateta can get in his old captain's head.
Well, I think you make an excellent point there as well about, in terms of strikers. I mean, we've seen some former Arsenal players sort of really show their skill and their value at Fulham. There's a certain former Arsenal player at Palace who's still yet to get a league goal. So it'd be interesting to see if he manages to break that duck this weekend. Because as I've always said, with strikers, it's almost like as soon as they get one goal, suddenly the water starts flowing. So we're just going to take another quick ad break. And when we come back, we're going to hear some combined Palace Fulham 11s even. God, I can't speak English. Don't go away. This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football, and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network, every club, every day. Welcome back to the final segment of the Daily Palace / Fulham crossover pod. It's Wednesday, the 6th of November. We've had some amazing insights and details and stats thrown at us by our members from the Palace and Fulham squads. But now we're going to get to the the gritty. Charlie, who is in your combined Palace Fulham 11? Are there any Palace players actually in it? I'll be intrigued to hear.
Yes. So I struggled at times, because I didn't know, first of all, if we're going off form, because form seems harsh. Because there are a lot of players in Palace's squad that can be very, very good on their day, but they're not coming together as a team at the moment. I think that's all that we're seeing. Eze's obviously in as a Palace player. Gay's obviously in. I think you have to. I've actually got I've got your centre-back partnership from last year, which would have been nice if you guys could hang on to that.
Eze played at Fulham for a while as well, didn't he? So technically he is both a Palace and Fulham player.
So he has to go in then. There we go. No, so I'm at left back. In goal, I've got Leno, just because I think Leno is just a consummate professional keeper. I don't think there are many longer-serving Premier League goalkeepers around at the moment than Bernd Leno. He's been fantastic, and he's even picking up. I mean, I think he came second in clean sheets last season. You've already had a couple this season. I mean, yeah, I cannot speak highly enough about Bernd Leno. Anthony Robinson at left back. I think I don't know. I don't even think this is biased. I do think he's the best left back in the league. Comfortably for me. I think Robertson's gone downhill, and the only other one I'd really throw up there is maybe a Doggy, and I think he's better than him. So, I mean, I'm not saying Tyreek Mitchell isn't good. He's just not good enough. That's where we're at. And then at right back, I'm going to put Munoz in. It's tough. That I'm going to be nice and put Munoz in, because Tete has been fantastic this season. But
thanks.
Munoz he's very good. He's also quick, and Tete is not quick, and I quite like having pace in my fullbacks. Obviously, we've already said Andersen and Gay. I think they work together already. I mean, we've seen it, so we know they can work together. So it's a good choice there, I think. In midfield, it's a tough one, really, because I want to put Lukic in really badly, but he's injured at the moment. So I don't know if we're going off players that are available or not. But if we're not, then
why not? Let's do it.
Why not?
Even if they've got a broken arm or leg.
I'll put Lukic in. He will be back in about a week, so I mean it feels okay. But yeah, I put Lukic in. I think he has stepped in for Palhinha for us this season and has just been a complete revelation. No one really at Fulham sort of coming into this season were thinking about Lukic as a solution. We all thought it was going to be Xander Berger, who obviously he's been okay. He's not been setting the world alight by any means, but Lukic has just completely transformed how I feel about our midfield when he's in it. Rarely misplaces a pass, always looks to go forward, just does everything sort of well, and that is really difficult to find. I'd love to put Wharton in, but he's literally is he out for the season now? Is he?
No, not as long as that.
It's not as long as that.
Yeah. Okay. Short surgery.
Because I really like Adam Wharton. I think he's fantastic. So I'd probably put Wharton and Lukic as the two centre mids, and then play Smith Rowe Smith Rowe on the left and Eze in front of them. But to be honest, I think those two could sort of switch around as the game progresses. So Eze and Smith Rowe, and then I'd put Adama on the right just because of what he offers. I think it's ridiculous. I've never seen a football player like Adama Traore, and I probably never will. Just the way he's built and the way he moves. Earlier this season, watching him outpace Kyle Walker was a season highlight for me. That was just crazy.
Is he still oiling his arms? I remember that was his big thing. He still oils his arms because he said people.
It's because they're so big. You could, yeah, exactly. And then up front, I'm going to pick Raul Jimenez. I think he's been good this season. He's proven a lot of people wrong. He's still scoring Premier League goals at a serious rate. And I think that no other striker we have is doing it. I mean, Muniz, everyone thought was going to be the guy this year. But he just hasn't quite got it going. I still think his hold-up play is fantastic, but he's just not scoring goals, and you need your striker to score goals at the end of the day, really. That's what the position's there for.
Like you said, he had that sort of... Yeah, he sort of had that purple patch at the end of last season, didn't he?
Yeah, so
really, really good.
When you were talking about they just sort of need one goal, that was the best definition I've ever seen of that. Is literally we bought Broja in to cover his position because no one was scoring. And they were like, oh, we'll give Muniz one game just before Broja starts. And he scored. And we're like, oh, we can't drop him then. And then he scored 2. And then he scored again. And then he scored again. And he's just like, wait, what? Is he back? So, yeah, but he's not been great this season so far. I think he's a good option off the bench. But I'd start Raul up front for me. And I think that rounds it out quite nicely, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you say, with Raul Jimenez as well, the thing that's really impressed me, I think it's always tough with any player and any injury in terms of recovery. I'd say even more so with a head injury, because I think that I think the fact that he's, as you said, been come back and been able to perform at the top level, despite having such a horrific accident, however long ago now, and he's still managed to come back and is still I would say a very dangerous striker, and I think like a really good player. So Joe, what's happening? Who's in the combined 11? Who's made the Joe Lodge superstar team? Inform us.
Well, there's a bit of overlap. I've as in show of support for Oliver Glasner, I've gone with the 3-4-3. Also because I think there's a bit of a lack of talent in central midfield. As I was talking to Charlie about in the green room. But yeah, I've gone Leno in goal as well. Last week I said picking between Dean Henderson, Sam Johnston was like choosing between Warburtons. This is like choosing between a Volkswagen and a Vauxhall. They're both pretty reliable, good miles per gallon all rounders. But
so it was bread last week, cars this week. I'm intrigued to know what comparison is going to be next week. Will it be like toilet cleaner or something like that?
That's true. That's a good one, actually. I might do toilet cleaner.
I don't mean to encourage you. No, that was.
Yeah. So yeah, I just think that Leno's a little bit more same thing, but just slightly kind of higher spec version of the same keeper. 2022-23 season, he prevented like 9 goals more than he was expected to on XG, which is like serious. Shows the guy's a pretty elite shot stopper, really. I think then they've gone kind of Lacroix on the right centre back position. He's just shown the elements of being a really great centre back, even if it's not been in any spectacular performances for Palace yet. He seems to read the game well, fairly level-headed despite his worrying disciplinary record in Germany. So that's something to keep an eye on. Rapid, strong, and a really good passer of the ball. I think he could be a top quality centre back once he's settled in. Andersen, the middle of the back three, I think he's really well suited to that role, and it's a shame that he didn't get more of a chance to play it under Glasner. And then Gahey, left centre back, picks himself. If he's England's starting centre back, he starts for this team. Robinson, I did say might have some trouble with Sarr earlier, which doesn't sound like a massive compliment, but I have gone with him at left wing back. I think he's offers a lot going forward, and looks to have improved a significant amount this season defensively. He's tackling more and getting dribbled past less, looking at the numbers, than he was last year. So I think he's only going strength to strength and is a really good player. Also, Wharton, again, at his best, his ability to kickstart attacks, just punch a ball between the lines when you don't expect him to, is really invaluable. Difficult for him to measure, but a great talent. And the other centre mid, I've gone a bit rogue. I considered Sander Berger, but I've decided he's just like a sort of twinkle toad, but actually an effective big relegation magnet. And instead, I've picked Alex Iwobi in there because I think everyone needs to get this idea out of their heads that he's an attacking midfielder and that the spirit of his uncle JJ Koch is suddenly going to burst out of him on the pitch. He's actually really brilliant at ball progression, sort of strong enough and committed enough to be combative when he needs to be. And I think he'd do a great job just progressing the ball up the pitch, dribbling it out, finding clever, neat little passes to break the lines in this kind of role. Munoz at right back, some of the reasons. I think at his best, he's a quality player, can come inside and help the midfield with his tidy passing, can put a devilish cross. He's pretty indefatigable when he's fit, quick. He's just all round great. It's been about form at the start of the season, but he's picked up in the last couple of weeks, a couple of assists and really positive performances. So I think he's definitely what I'd want in. Just behind the striker, I've gone with Eze and Smith Rowe as well. I think Eze showed in his time at Palace with Wilf a bit, and particularly with Michael Elise, that he plays really well with players who you might think would step on his toes and be a bit too like-minded. He's got that kind of ability to form relationships with people, those sort of symbiotic connections. And I think him and Smith Rowe would play brilliantly together. And most importantly, it would really support Finn's ambitions to turn Palace into an athletic Bilbao style de facto South London national team. So I think that would be really good. And up front, I have to go Jean-Philippe Mateta. I mean, I'm not going to say that he's been better than Wale this season.
I
But
didn't realise Jean-Philippe Mateta grew up in Peckham. What are you talking about?
you can get citizenship at a later date. But I just think he's, the way I've written it down here actually is lowercase acronym, so it reads Saint Jean-Philippe Mateta, which I think sums up how I feel about him. My interest in the club and the sport and getting out of bed every morning is undermined if Mateta's not about, so he has to be up front.
Amazing. There we have it. So I would say two really good mixed squads there with some really interesting attributes on either side. That's all about time we have. Oh God, sorry guys, I'm just losing the ability to speak the English language there. I don't know why. It's really good that I've hosted a football podcast that week. I want to say a massive thank you to both Joe Lodge from the Daily Palace team.
Thank you, Fem.
And a massive thank you to Charlie from the Daily Fulham team.
Brilliant. Thank you guys so much for having me.
No, it's been a pleasure, Charlie. We'll have you back again real soon, hopefully. And yeah, thank you, listeners. And we look forward to catching up with you next week after Palace play Fulham. And who knows what's going to go down. Ooh. We'll see you then. But for now, bye, listeners. Bye.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.